Welcome to the Skins in the Burg podcast. The Skins in the Burg podcast, your best source for Commanders commentary in the Carolinas and beyond. I'm your host, LG, and we got a big show for you today. Big show. Not only do we have a special guest today, none other than my mom, Patricia Gray, with her third appearance on the podcast. Everybody, welcome Patricia Gray. But we're gonna do a full season recap for you today, a 2025 Commanders season in review today, starting with last off season and ending with really the latest piece of news that occurred this week. So we're gonna break it all down for you. But if I had to sum it all up, this whole 2025 season, I think it's gonna be remembered most for its injuries and how injuries really affected the outcome of the season, probably in a way that I haven't seen before ever. But like I said, we got a special guest today. We got my mom, Patricia Gray. So, mom, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. If you had just a word or a sentence or two to sum up this whole season, how would you sum up the season?
Well, I would sum it up. The injuries were devastating, but I'm not too sure if there wasn't some other stuff in the background too. In other words, I'm not as certain that the injuries accounted for all of the sorriness of the season.
Hmm, okay. All right. Well, we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that more specifically when we start we get into the actual in season portion of the recap. But like I said, we're gonna go all the way back to last off season, and we're gonna go ahead and kick it off there. So last off season began with a couple of trades. Starting on March 1st, we traded for Debo Samuel, a trade that at the time I thought was intriguing, and I liked the move. But we did give up a 2025 fifth round pick, which in my opinion, the grade on that trade to me is still incomplete. I think that it kind of depends on what they're able to do this offseason. If they are able to re-sign Debo to a reasonable contract. I mean, when I say reasonable, I mean nowhere near the contract of a Terry McLaurin, but something where we obviously say, okay, the team got a nice team-friendly deal. If we're able to do something like that and have him on the roster again, then I think the trade would lean towards being a good trade. But if we don't even have him on our roster, because either we can't work out a contract or we determine that he's just not a good fit for the offense moving forward, then I'd say it was a poor trade because you give up a fifth round pick in this year's draft. So when the fifth round comes along, you don't have a pick and you don't have the player that you traded away from, away for that pick. So if we don't have him on our roster next year for whatever reason, then to me that ends up being a bad trade. What you think about the trade, Mom?
I'd have to kind of go hindsight. I thought it was worth it at the time, but now that I look back on the season, it is harder to gauge it because I don't know how much his performance or lack thereof was due to injuries, around us. Like, would he have been better had he and Terry McLaurin played more together with Jada? So that's actually two players that were in and out of the mix. So it's kind of hard to gauge. But if I'm going just by what happened, just by stats and all that, it just doesn't seem like we got a lot of production out of it.
So real quick, you think we should attempt to get something done moving forward, or just go ahead and let him walk in free agency?
I think we should try, but I don't know if he'll go for it. While you were saying that, I was trying to go through the list of teams and seeing who desperately needed offensive weapons, so if somebody would offer him a better deal or if, we would be his best bet. I think he wants to be here, but I don't know if he'd take a team friendly deal.
But if he would, you'd be in favor
Oh yeah,
of him
definitely. If it
coming
was a
back.
team friendly, yes, definitely. If it was a team friendly deal.
The grade on the trade, you've got that being kind of affected by injury. Don't really
Exactly.
know, can't really grade it or assess it because you think maybe we would have got more out of him if we had our full complement of weapons around him, basically.
Exactly.
All right. Now, the next thing we did in the offseason was traded for Laramie Tunsil. That was a third and a seventh 2025 pick, a third round and a seventh round 2025 pick, and then the second round of this year's draft pick. So we don't have a second rounder. I think my assessment of that trade is really the same as my assessment of the Debo trade, except times 10. And I say that to say, if we're able to lock him up, and I don't care what those numbers are. I mean, if we end up having to pay him the best, make him the highest paid tackle, I'll go ahead and make him the highest paid tackle because top 5 tackles, which I think he performed at a level up this year. They don't grow on trees. So if we can lock him up, then good. It'll end up being a good trade. If we don't have him in our locker room next year and we gave up a third, we gave up a seventh, we gave up a second in this year's draft, and he's not on the roster, then that's disaster. That's totally disaster. If you don't have the player and you don't have the second round pick and last year's third round pick, and you don't have the player, then that's almost front office malpractice there. So you've got to get something done. I'd prefer a long term deal. I don't want to see him going down the road of franchise tag. The percentages on that ending well seems to be very low. So I like him to get something done and get something done quickly, and then I'm able to say that that was a successful trade. But what you think?
I would like for them to have gotten something done last week.
Last week, I can't disagree with that because you don't. It's not like it's unprecedented. You see guys getting locked up around this time all the time. You saw a couple guys get locked up around the league in December and January. So there's nothing stopping you from doing it other than you just getting it done. And I don't think that the longer is the trend now in the league is the longer you wait, the more you're gonna pay. So you might as well go ahead and get it done now.
So, a kind of side issue, real quick.
Okay.
So, I sense from Adam Peters' press conference that they want to get that done, but the amount of money it would take might be a deterrent. So, if it's a deterrent, do you think there's any truth to that rumor that they're not in a position to spend what they have financially?
A rumor that they're not in position to spend what they have.
Like, so the salary cap. Okay, so they have room with the cap, but
Well, you think they're
is
cash broke?
yeah, that's what I'm asking. Do you think there's any truth to that rumor?
I don't know. I would say I most certainly hope not. I hope that's not the case. I hope you didn't get into the business of buying a football franchise and not have what you need to fully fund the player personnel side of it. I mean, it's a players league. Everybody knows it's a players league. If you invested, which they have, they invested into the facility, they invested into FedEx Field. I'm sorry, now Northwest Field. They've made some upgrades and some significant investments financially. I would hope that any franchise, whenever they feel the need to, can be in position to maximize the salary cap. Now, I know when you do sign players, you have to have certain portions of that bonus already on hand so you can put in the escrow. I'm not a pro when it comes to that sort of thing, but I hope it wouldn't be a money thing. I mean, that's especially with the amount of names, how cash rich I think these guys are personally. I would hope they're not penny pinching on the business side when it comes to player acquisition and player retention. We see that in some of our other local sports, and I just hate it. I mean, I hate it. I think you got to be in position to your biggest investment has to be in your players because your rundown facilities. Some of that stuff gets covered up with winning, and to win, you have to have players. So you can have the
Well,
brightest facilities in the world, but if you can't afford players, then that's a problem. So I hope it's not true, but I don't know.
well, I've heard that they've had to put more into the facility than they expected, and that might be what's,
Again, I
possible.
mean,
But
I get it. I mean, they paid a record price for a sports franchise, and they're embarking on a massive massive deal right now as far as the stadium. But again, I mean, sports is all about the players that play them, and if you can't field the team you would like to field because of cash, then that would be highly disappointing. It'd be highly disappointing. You see all the time across all of all four major sports that the teams that consistently win have higher payrolls. You don't really see a lot of small market or small payroll teams winning it all, and we all in it to win it all. So you got to be able to afford the players to win it all. I hope that's not the case. I mean, I hope that's not the case. But we'll see. I mean, so far they haven't really given out the massive, massive, massive deal. But I think left tackle is one of those positions where everybody knows, that's where get a good percentage of your cap needs to be. Left tackle, cornerback, quarterback, and so you got to get it done. You got to get it done. But put it this way, losing that player would be disaster. So you got to do what you can to get that done, and hopefully finances won't be the thing that doesn't get it done. I would hope. But hey, we're going to find out a lot about this deal. But moving forward into last season's draft, I started it out with both the trades. But what did you think about the results of the draft when you consider maybe the top players from that draft being Josh Connolly, ended up playing right tackle for us, Trey Amos, who played who probably was the brightest spot for us on defense before he went down to injury. Jalen Lane, who proved himself to be a significant weapon in special teams, returning two kicks for touchdowns. And then what we were able to see Bill do at the running back position as a rookie and not really having a big time productive college career, but end up coming on the scene. So, given those four players, those four potential hits, what do you think about the draft that we had last year?
Well, I'm very optimistic because, of course, you need more than a year to evaluate. And even given that, I think we've seen enough production from all of them to
Sorry,
be
you said you
optimistic.
I'm sorry, you said you are very optimistic?
Yes,
Oh, okay, okay.
because, like I say, what production they had, given this was just their first year, leaves optimism.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think if you got four players that you potentially hit on, especially to the point where when I look at those four guys, Connolly at right tackle, of course, Amos at corner, Lane at returner, Bill at running back. The ceiling is that you got the potential of four stars right there. That's the ceiling. That they may not all realize that potential, but I think the potential is there to have four stars. And if you got four stars in a single draft, you hit at an incredible rate. Yeah, I thought again TBD a little bit. So far I'm optimistic as well. Now, next in the offseason, I think is where things took a little bit of a turn, at least from the ooey gooey feelings that everybody was feeling last year. The type of wins we had, the amount of wins we had, the fact that we made the playoffs, the fact that we performed in the playoffs, got to the NFC championship game, and then made a couple of moves in the offseason that looked like we positioned ourselves to be even better. The first bit of sourness that came with this regime really, I say, started with the Terry McLaurin contract negotiations. The first warning signs kind of came when we started having some mandatory things that Terry missed. And so you've got, anytime you got a player that popular, not only among the media, but the fans, somebody who's gone through the losing, somebody who's gone through, the quarterback changes that we've had and looks like, has been a loyal soldier, but also probably our best weapon in the last 5 or 6 years. A lot of people was on the side of, hey, just pay the guy, just pay him what he wants. I wasn't with that side. I was on the side of making the best prudent business deal, especially considering the fact that you didn't really have to make a deal at that time. But as we know, things on both sides got a little bit contentious. He ended up missing some training camp. And that was kind of the first signs of a crack in that whole family,
Some
brotherhood, feel good
some
situation.
training camp. Did you say some training camp?
Well, most of training camp. I mean, yeah, I guess we can go ahead and marry that with what happened in training camp because that's probably was the biggest storyline in training camp. So yeah, so would you agree with that? That was kind of the turning point from things being so feel good to kind of I don't know.
Yeah,
Would you first of all would you agree with that? And then what side of that camp was you on as it related to the Terry negotiations?
well, I absolutely agree that that was the turning point. I guess now, if you're the front office, you got to, make an assessment of was it worth it because it costs you something. Even if I was on their side and I didn't want some outlandish deal, definitely, but it costs you something. Front office, was it worth it? You won't know. Well, I guess something like that is just going to tell the tale of how are your negotiations going to go, for future negotiations. Like I could see a guy like Tunsil saying, "Hey, I don't care what happened with Terry, give me my money." And, just because I'm sure you've heard that he wants his money. He's that type of guy. So how's that going to go going forward? I think McLaurin he could have taken that deal, I think, earlier than he took it because I don't think it was what he wanted. But if he was going to take it, then he should have taken it earlier. It hurt him and it hurt the team.
Yeah, I think him and his agent was a little bit mistaken by by their amount of leverage, which was minimal. I think that they thought they had more leverage than they did, which is why they held out, thinking that they could end up getting more than what they got. And as time, I really think in the game of chicken, that the Commanders end up winning that game of chicken just because of the amount of leverage they had versus the player. And I think that the player and the agent grossly overestimated how much leverage they thought they had. And I just think it was a bad play. And the results end up being bad for both sides. I think that the agent probably did Terry a disservice by not really fully assessing what the end game could be. And I think if he really from the start assessed the potential end game and potential risk had planned it the way they played it, I think maybe they would have chosen a different route. But yeah, it definitely was a turning point in our season. But since we married at the training camp, I'm gonna bring up a point that I'm still on the lookout for because I'm still concerned about, and I still think it kind of set the tone for our season, and that is our approach to training. Now, I didn't attend not one single training camp practice, and I've never attended a single training camp practice in the history of football. But just from listening to the commentary and listening to the guys that's been out there over the years, former players, former coaches, media members, it seems to me that all the best organizations, they really get after it in training camp. They don't have, it seems like whenever you have reports of the type of training, when you have the easy training camps, stuff where it seems like it's that you know, camp football environment where players really enjoying themselves and they really love the coach and all that type of nonsense. I don't think that ends up producing the type of results that the fan base of those teams want. It seemed like the tough, hard nosed approach to training camp produces the results. I don't see where, and I guess those who are proponents of the kind of softer style training camps say, that these days you have to be more cognizant of the injury risk and things of that nature. And then what ended up happening? Like we didn't even gain anything from an injury standpoint. We end up having the most injured team that I've seen. So you don't gain anything by having that soft training camp. And then the results to me play out on the field the way you think they would, where they're not ready for games. They come out, a little bit flat, not intense. And I think that in the preseason we played a game. I know preseason doesn't matter, but it's still a seed planted in my mind when we played New England and how the mindset that New England came out with versus the mindset that it appeared we came out with. And injuries or no injuries, that seemed to still be the mindset we had throughout the season to me because of that lackluster training camp. And I wanted to find out what you think about that. I know you sometimes have the motherly side of things. What do you feel about, hard nose versus the softer side of training camp? And to be upfront, I do know the San Francisco's of the world, back when the Bill Walsh days, they notoriously had like, softer training camps where they didn't really do a lot of hitting and stuff, and they were still successful. But where do you fall on that side of approach to training? You hard nose or you like the resting your vets type deal?
Well, I think resting some of the older guys days off type of stuff was probably a good thing, especially when you look at the fact that they were the least injured of the bunch, the older guys. But I think that resting thing is different from your overall approach to training camp. Like, okay, you're going to have a day off here, a day off there. But the days that you're there, it needs to be productive. It doesn't need to be this, having fun type of thing. If you're there that day, then you need to go hard, reasonably hard without risking, and I don't know how you do that, but apparently we didn't do it at any level. It was too much of a let's get out here and throw some balls and have some fun. That's what it seemed like to my eyes, even though I didn't go. Judging from my eyes, I did watch a lot of film, but judging from my eyes and from what the former players were saying, that's what it just seemed like. Let's go ahead and have some fun, throw some balls around, see who can catch the longest pass, and what can we get for video. Yeah, I think they need to take it much more serious.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. It's funny how much we agree when I turn this camera on versus when we have our private conversations. But I agree.
That's all you.
But especially when you consider, I mean, one key point you made, you're right. You can do the rest the veteran thing, giving them sporadic days off, but still have a hard nosed training camp. You're right about that. Where you do more hitting, where you do more thudding, where you do more, develop more of a callus towards physical play. And the thing about it is he preaches that. He preaches not only competition, but being a tough, hard nosed team. And it didn't seem like they ever physically quit on Dan Quinn. It just doesn't seem like they brought the intensity. It doesn't seem like they brought the fight immediately to every game. And you're right. You can still give your vets days off while still having, for whoever's out there, one of the toughest environments. And that's what I would like to hear more of. That, man, these guys, they had their tongues dragging. People criticize, and for good reason, Eric Bieniemy's tenure as offensive coordinator. But one thing that I did not criticize was how hard he had those guys working in a training camp environment.
So,
I
so,
think that go ahead, I'm sorry.
so do you think the first training camp under Quinn was better, was more focused, more task oriented than this last one?
I don't know. I kind of heard it was not as hard working. It wasn't as tough, I guess, that people wouldn't describe it as tough. I heard that about the first one too. Obviously, the results were different as far as the season is concerned. It's kind of what you the style of football, style of play that you like to see, preference wise. He preaches a tough style of play. To me, that has to be developed and molded during the training portion of your season, whether it's the mini camps, the training camps, the organized team activities. That set you set the tone then, not during the season. And so yeah, no, I mean, as far as the approach, I kind of heard the same things in the first year, even though we got good results. It's still not what I want. It's kind of like when you know the Indianapolis Colts back when Peyton Manning was playing. They had that. Their approach to football was they won, but it wasn't really my brand of football. I like more of the physical play. More of a running, hitting. Even their defense, when they had decent defenses, it was because they were fast and covered a lot of ground. Not really hard hitting. I like a physical brand of football. The brand of football I like to me is produced during camp by setting that tough tone. So no, I didn't like the approach last year either. As far as if you listen to what was coming out of camp,
So why do you think it was successful?
Jaden Daniels, and there was some very 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 slim margins when it came to wins and losses. I mean, there was we had a lot of last play victories. One of them being on my T-shirt right now. And I'm not saying that we weren't a much better team than we were this year. Of course we were. I think the results, and we're about to get into that now. Let's go ahead and get into it because we're talking about, if you're asking me what the difference was between last year's results and this year's results, if we go ahead and get into this year's results as a season, like I said in the open, everything has to be judged from the prism of the injuries. I don't think there is a team in the history of team building in sports or otherwise where you can eliminate the type of talent that you eliminated from that team and then think that you're going to produce results. I don't think that anybody in any team format could have overcome the amount of talent that you took away from that team as it relates to a result standpoint. I just don't. I think that when you have your quarterback, I'm sorry, your top two quarterbacks, your top running back, your top, I'm sorry, Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey, your one, three, four receivers, probably your second best receiver from last year, your top three defensive ends, Dietrich Wise, Dorrance Armstrong, Drake Jackson, your top safety, Will Harris. Marshawn Lattimore has had a disappointing stint with us since he got traded. However, he did miss 9 games this year as a starting cornerback. Trey Amos missed 7 games as a starting cornerback. And the list continues. I mean, it just goes on and on. Austin Eckler, who was set to be a major factor. It's no way that you can lose all that talent in one season and think that you was going to have any type of season whatsoever. I know people don't like to use injuries as an excuse, but I don't play football. I don't have to get up every day and motivate the guys to keep going. I can look out and just see and commentate on what I see. And if those players weren't significant, they wouldn't have been starters. Those players were starters. Those players were potentially our stars if we were going to have a good season, and they all went down. And you were doomed once they all went down. I don't think you could have had any sort of different result from a record standpoint with the amount of injuries that you had. We can get into some style of play. We can get into some discipline. We can get into what we thought we saw after those injuries occurred. But to me, the results of the season was never going to be any different with the amount of injuries that we had. So, what do you think?
I agree with that, but I also think that there were a few red flags in the play of some of the starters when they were on the field that there might have been differences from the previous season. I don't know. I don't know what it. Jaden didn't. He just didn't seem the same to me. Even now, I know there were injuries, but even in the games where and I understand it was just a few games, but it was just kind of red flaggish to me. Even if you want to start with the first game that we won, it just, I don't know if I'd use the word regression, but it didn't seem like the same Jaden. like it didn't seem as crisp and sharp, even in the games when we were practically full strength as it did the year before.
I can't 100% deny that that wasn't the case. I can't say that I didn't see that. I saw a little bit of that. I saw some of that. I saw in the first couple of games before we started looking like a mass unit. I saw something where you can say, "Oh, it doesn't quite look the same." But again, I think you look at why, and I think if we played this season out without all the injuries, let's say they were healthy and they come out and against the win against the Giants, so they look the way they look. And yes, I agree that Jaden Daniels to a degree in that first game didn't quite look like himself. Well, you know, how much rhythm offensively was really established during that training camp, you know, with Terry McLaurin being out, with Noah Brown being out. So from a continuity standpoint, you know, his receivers when that season ended last year was Terry McLaurin, it was Brown, it was Zacchaeus, it was a oh, the two Browns. I'm sorry, not just Noah Brown, but also the other Brown out of North Carolina, De'Ami Brown. So you had McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Noah Brown, Zacchaeus, and you start the season and none of those dudes are on the field. None of them. Not a single one of them is on the field. I'm sorry. Terry did play that week one. However, he didn't. I mean, he wasn't involved in training camp at all, so they never really established a good rhythm. So and they still didn't look terrible offensively. They got enough done to go ahead and win the game. And so, you know, I think there was a reason why they didn't look as sharp. Now, I think that they could have improved as time went along. I think that the continuity would have grown. I think that the familiarity would have grown. I think they would have gotten more familiar with the system, more familiar with each other, and there was potential for the offense to get better and for Jaden Daniels to look better. But then, I mean, starting in that next game, that second game, is when the carnage began. I mean, Jaden went down, Eckler went down, Terry went down right there in game number two. And after that, I just think it was a snowball effect. But I'd agree it looked a little different. I just think that you gotta consider maybe why, you know, why it looked different. And, you know, we'll see going into this pivotal third year. But when you say red flags, other than is the main red flag you're speaking to Jaden, and here's why I'd ask, because okay, Jaden, he wasn't on the field for most of the season. So if he wasn't even on the field for most of the season, when you say red flags, who were the what are the sort of red flags you're speaking to that doesn't have to do with Jaden Daniels?
Well, they had to do with him because I also when I said red flags, I said the few games, which was two, three, maybe four, the few games where they were at any kind of strength, it didn't seem the same. So the field of red flags is small. You know, there's not enough probably footage, but just what I saw. Now, I would agree with what you said about um the players who were on the field even from the beginning. I would agree with that because training camp you didn't have Terry, you probably didn't have enough. You definitely didn't have enough preseason play, you know, to help anything. But I hate to say this, and don't throw tomatoes at me, audience. But I kind of in the back of my mind there was this thing, this little irritant. Is Jaden feeling himself?
Mm,
And so
mm.
there you have it.
I mean, well, I mean, let me ask you a direct question. Are you saying our season, one of the things that affected our season was the success of last season getting to the head of Jaden Daniels? You saying Jaden Daniels got a case of the big head and that affected our season? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I'm saying the tiniest bit because he wasn't playing enough. He could have worked through that. I think he has enough um awareness that he could have worked through like okay, let's focus and you know and not let all of this the past season and the past off season affect me. Let me just focus in on doing what I need to do on this field. But there wasn't enough time for that. Even when he was in there after that, it was always with some ex Home Depot employees or whatever. So it was just such a small sample, but in that sample, I did kind of and you know what? Okay, so okay, I'm gonna just go hard on this. You know what I didn't like?
Okay.
Well,
Let's hear it.
what made me feel it a little bit?
Okay.
Remember the segment he did with Saquon, and I forgot who the other guy was. You know, where they were talking about their spectacular plays prior
Just
season.
Justin Jefferson, the commercial
Right.
and
Yeah.
kind of the marketing campaign for,
Yeah.
the Madden game with, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson, and Jaden Daniels. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So, what I was like, what made me was when Saquon or one of the other guys said, and you had and I guess they couldn't think of what the injury was, but they was trying to think of what injury he had, and you had, and then Jayden tuned in with broken ribs. You know, like, yeah, I did that. I did that with broken ribs, dude.
I think you sprinkled a little bit of sauce on that. But
I did. But
but I
he
know
did say the way he said broken ribs was like, yeah. Now a little bit. Now once you say was like, yeah, I had broken ribs.
I mean, it definitely was popping his collar a little bit. I mean, it definitely was popping his collar. I don't think it was with that much animation. I don't think I've ever seen him animated
It
at all.
wasn't. It wasn't. You're right. I put a little sauce on it. But when that made me that coupled with other just I can't other
Appearances.
little yeah, just made me kind of think, And you know, he's young. All of the accolades he got from when everybody knew who he was up through, I would say the whole off season, it could have just been a little bit too much for a rookie.
So let me ask you this: a guy like Jaden Daniels, who, at least by all accounts, is a notorious worker, a notorious workaholic when it comes to that football field and preparation. You know, a first in, last out type of guy. How do you think the big head ends up manifesting itself in a guy like that? Because if he's putting in the work, he's putting in the time. Usually, a guy who's feeling himself a little bit starts to maybe cut a little corners, doesn't work as hard as he used to. But by all accounts, he's a notorious worker. So how does getting the big head, how does it manifest itself in a guy like Jaden?
Well, I'm not really certain this had anything to do with it at all, okay? But this is what pops in my head. When he was injured, I wasn't in love with his sideline demeanor.
What do you mean? What was his sideline demeanor?
Was it like, oops, sorry. Hold on a second.
So you thought he had that like a nonchalant, not really into the
Yeah.
action demeanor?
Well, I'm not gonna say not into it, but into it more from the standpoint of a spectator as opposed to learning something from it, observing and
So you're not even saying he didn't do a good job of cheering on his teammates. You thought he should have been more involved with what's going on in the field, maybe have a headset
exactly.
on over there watching some of the clips,
Yeah.
kind of being more involved. I can't argue with that either. You're right. But Jaden Daniels is coming off a rookie season. He still is a young guy. He's a young man. To me, if that certainly was the case, and it appeared to be the case that he was not as engaged in the details of the game, then to me it's the responsibility of those coaches. I mean, what are you there for as coaches if it's not to cultivate that sort of thing? Yes, you would like to see him, you want to see him take more of ownership of it. And he seems to have that kind of personality. But, if you're a coach, why wouldn't you say, hey, if you can't be on the field, we're gonna get these mental reps after every play? As a coach, I mean, they're the adults. What are they there for? I mean, what do you think? Don't you think the coaches bear some responsibility when it comes to that?
I would say 80% of the responsibility because it seems like the coaches thinks that Jaden can coach himself.
That's
So
something
yeah,
that's something I'm concerned about moving forward too. I want to see how the season plays out. I know we're gonna get a little bit more into the coaching situation moving forward later on, but yes, that's something I'm really looking at because it does appear as if they a little bit it seems like they're little bit of acquiescing to how Jaden wants to be coached. That's the appearance that's kind of taking shape with this relationship between the coaching staff and him. So I'd agree
I'm
with that.
wondering I'm wondering if it's a little bit of is it really how he wants to be coached or are they afraid to coach him? It's almost to me like they have on kid gloves, like, they might be a little bit reluctant to coach him.
Definitely publicly. Maybe something else goes on inside those doors. Maybe something else goes on in those meeting rooms. But certainly publicly, they look a little bit like you said, like they handle them with kid gloves. So moving along with the season, I think the next thing that I would say affected that record. Again, I just want to reiterate, I don't think that they could have had any different record with the amount of injuries that they had, not a different record. But I think a huge influence on what the season looked like was the ineptitude of that defense. I'm reluctant to say that is the worst defense I've seen in a Commander's uniform or Redskins uniform. I'm reluctant to say that because I can remember some abysmal defenses. I remember some of those defenses with Kirk Cousins where it seemed like we couldn't stop anything then too. So I'm reluctant to say the worst, but definitely among the worst. I mean, it seems like no task was too big for an opposing offense when it related to down and distance. I mean, you're talking about some gross results on third down, particularly on third and long, where I was more nervous about a third and long than I was about really a second and short. I mean, it could be third and 14 and you biting your fingernails. That third and 14 supposed to mean, okay, barring a stupid flag somewhere that don't have nothing to do with the play, we getting off this field. Third and 14 in a watching a Commanders game means, boy, here we go. And so what I'd like to ask you, Mom, the results were what they were. I don't know if that can be debated, but what can be debated is the reasons. So do you think that it was more of a talent because of who we had on the field, injuries or otherwise? You think it was more of a scheme, having a very inexperienced defensive coordinator who has an outdated or a scheme that didn't get it done? Or do you think it was a little bit of both or a lot of bit of both?
Okay, but I don't know. To me, it seemed more like there were never adjustments. So you're gonna let the same tricks, not tricks, but you're gonna keep letting them have success and not changing anything you do throughout the whole game and the next game and the next game. I mean, you can't think of anything to combat all those successful third and fourth down plays. You ain't got nothing. You got nothing for that. And that's what was frustrating to me is there just did not seem to be any adjustments.
I, for one, put it much more. I think there's a talent deficiency, especially in a couple of areas.
Yeah, yeah, a
I
little
think they
bit.
can
Yeah.
have better personnel on defense, but I definitely put more of the blame on the coaching and the schematics. And probably, well, this is part of coaching, but just to get a little bit more detailed, however they coach the communication side of it, however I mean, it's just the same thing. And it doesn't matter what regime we have. It seemed like regime after regime after regime, we can't coach communication. Like we see mental breakdowns. We've seen mental breakdowns for 10 plus years now. We've seen guys running wide open. If we had a talent deficiency on the field, which we do, but to me that plays itself out by guys just getting beat here and there. And but but they're NFL players, so they should still be in the frame. We keep seeing guys being wide open
Right.
and we don't see any commanders in the frame.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
we see him looking around after the tackle's made, like, what in the world just happened? And it keeps happening consistently over and over again, whether you're talking about Jay Gruden's regime, whether you're talking about Ron Rivera's regime. And now we have a defensive coordinator who, everywhere he goes as a defensive coordinator, he has, in top ranked defenses. But then he comes here as a head coach. And once again, guys is running wide open with guys looking around like, what in the world just happened? And to have it happen consistently over and over again, game after game after game, is just downright puzzling. One thing I'm not a fan of, scheme wise, and what I agree with you wholeheartedly with, is their inability to adjust within that scheme. To me, okay, you came in with a personnel plan as far as how you were going to get to the quarterback, how you were going to generate pass rush. You got a little bit more talented up front, and it played itself out that way. It seemed like in the first game and a half. But once you started getting guys go down, okay, you can't just keep saying, okay, we don't have a pass rush and just keep displaying the same stuff and say we don't have a pass rush. Good defensive coordinators, guys who really have check marks under their name as relates to shut down defensive coordinators. Okay, then they incorporate some blitzes. Okay, we can't get to the quarterback, then we gonna get some exotic blitzing going on to where oh, oh, to where we get to that quarterback somehow, some way. We don't have a prolific defensive end, then we gonna send the house, and you're not gonna know who we gonna send from this side and who we gonna send from that side. There's guys who coach defenses that don't have that all pro pass rusher, but somehow they still get to the quarterback and generate some disruption. And we never did. We just
Never.
never did. It doesn't matter who we really had in there. We never did, and we never made an adjustment as you put it. to what we saw going on that field. And it wouldn't even Dan Quinn talks about not wanting the ups and downs and the roller coaster. It wasn't even a roller coaster. It was every week against whatever opponent. It didn't matter the talent of the opponent. We could not stop a thing. We could not stop a thing. And that's so puzzling when you have a coach such as Dan Quinn that makes his chops in defense. I'm concerned. Now, moving a little forward with that, we can kind of get into because that well, no, you know what? I'll hold that for a second. I'll hold that for a second. Um, I'll move to the offense. We know how they were devastated on offense with
Yes.
injuries. We know that. But again, I bring the same question to you. I definitely have some thoughts on it, but I'm gonna let you get the first go at it so I don't step on any of your points. But as it relates to our offense, do you think that if you thought we had a disappointing season on offense, do you think that was more related to the injuries, the scheme, or again, a lot of both?
I think a lot of it was the injuries, but I also think that we showed flashes, with some of our game plan even within the game, and we didn't seem to take what worked and use it often enough. So I
What
put
worked?
that a little bit. What worked? Well, I think we could have used the running game more.
I figured that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah. Now I'm not as much on that train as some people saying, all we had to do was run the ball. Sometimes our running was not successful. Sometimes it was just the wrong time to run. So, but or the wrong player out there running. Like for instance, I think when we were down there in the red zone, I'm real close to a touchdown, like first and goal from the we had a couple of first and goals from the 5 and stuff like that, around that area. That even when we did run, we didn't run Rodriguez, who has shown that he can be more of a bruiser than what um what's his name? Bill. Can't think of his name. What Bill brought to the table was his, maneuverability and elusiveness or whatever. But that wasn't the time for that. It was the time for you to get a bruiser in there and push his way into the end zone. So I just thought there was opportunities there that weren't taken advantage of. But I think the injuries did kind of decimate, especially on the passing game. Also, I don't know. I thought Devo dropped a little bit too many. Not, you know, at the time that he did passes,
Yeah.
like inopportune. Like, man, really?
Yeah. Yeah. We had some drops by Debo. Had some drops by Debo. I'm reluctant to be too critical on Debo, even though I do acknowledge he definitely has some drops. And he has some drops in critical moments. He definitely
Yes.
has some drops in critical moments. However, I'm a little reluctant to be too critical on him because I think he was one of the more consistent bright spots that we had all season. I think he was responsible for a lot of the success. If we, if you want to say we had any success, it probably related to Debo. But I'd agree with you as far as there. To me, I again related to the approach to the game. Dan Quinn consistently talks about play style and attitude. And you're right, it's not just whether we run, it's not how many yards we run for, it's when we run and who we run it with. Our attitude and approach toward the game. And one of the things I think where it really played itself out, where our attitude was and approach was not consistent with what Dan preaches, whenever we face teams that's known for their D line, known for their ability to get after the quarterback, stop the run. They got a crucial D line that's opposing, that's intimidating. To me, there's a way, attitude wise, that you approach that. And it was incredible to me how many times we played against a dominating D line, and our game plan was to come out the gate dropping back with 5 and 7 step
Oh,
drops against these opposing D lines. Like, how is that your game plan
right.
against all pro D line? To me, you attack that D line through the run game. You go right at them through the run game and then set up the pass with good play action after you've hit them and hit them and hit them with the run game. And to me, they had the ability to do it. Their offensive line proved to be, to me, a good run blocking offensive line, an effective play action offensive line, and you had a nice balance of backs. Rodriguez is a tough back. He breaks tackles. He is a bruiser. He doesn't just go down on the first punch. Bill is elusive. He did show some things in the run game and did have a nice per carry average. And then we've seen what who's that third down guy that
McNichols.
McNichols. We've seen how McNichols can make something out of nothing on a consistent basis, but I think we just didn't use them at the right times. But we had the tools to combat those dominant defensive lines, but we come out with the attitude and the approach of now we it's kind of like we gonna do this and allow them to come after us instead of us coming after them with some aggressiveness, with some toughness that Dan Quinn preaches. And it's so against that whole attitude of competition. To me, you attack a team's strengths, and we didn't do that. We didn't do that, and we didn't do that consistently. We would come out, we would see that that game plan doesn't work, and then the next time we facing a dominant defense with a dominant pass rush, we do the same thing. The same thing. Once again, like you spoke to with the defense, there was no adjustments. We see this doesn't work. We see this attitude doesn't work. You know how many times we started out that first drive? We were definitely unsuccessful in first drives and first quarters, period. But we would come out ready to sling the ball around like we was like Steve Spurrier was coaching. It's like, come on, man. You guys are preaching one thing and then you come out and do something totally different when the game starts. And so I would continue to say we wouldn't have gotten any different record with the amount of injuries that we had. But I did not understand our approach to the game, both on offense and defense. I'd say it was a little bit of talent on the field, a lot of bit of scheme and approach to the game. Did you want to follow up on it?
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
So I'd say just to recap the season, I mean, we don't have to go game by game or nothing like that. To me, it was the same thing throughout. Basically, the injuries totally affected us, totally really, really determined what our season was going to look like. And then to me, our approach to the game, even after the injuries, had a big effect. You alluded to our inability to make adjustments. Once those injuries did come, we didn't make the adjustments. So it was just failure all around. One thing that's continuing to show itself in the Dan Quinn era is costly penalties. I'm a little bit irritated by that because to me, that's the responsibility and the job of a coach is to coach a well-disciplined team. And when a team starts to show that they're consistently undisciplined, that falls on the coach. That is his direct responsibility is to have those guys ready to perform from a discipline standpoint. So I think all those things affected our season. It's definitely time for a regroup, time for a rewind. And speaking of, one of the first things that came after the season was over, we all used to Black Monday and the firings that occur after that last week of the season. We're no stranger to it. And while we didn't fire our head coach, we did fire both coordinators. One was termed as a mutual parting of ways. Another one was termed as a firing, and that one came of no surprise whatsoever in Joe Witt Jr. But we're doing a total reset with our coordinators. What did you think about the fact that before we even get into who we're going to hire, who some potential hirees are, what did you think just about the fact of us getting rid of both coordinators in year two of this regime?
Of course, I'm with, yeah, unqualified. Yeah. I can see both sides of the fence with and Cliff, but I think there was a lot more in play with just how he coached the offense. I think there were some philosophical things that entered into play between he and Dan. So and they just weren't they just bump heads. That's what it seems like to me. But, I'm not no tears cried for Cliff. Well, and partially because, there was the thought out there that this would be his last year anyway, because he was going to get a coaching offer. But our season kind of maybe, affected the fact that he ain't hired yet. I don't think he is. But I guess we were kind of going. We were even looking at, well, who's gonna who's going to be the Jaden's OC when Cliff leaves because this is going to be his last year. So maybe that's why it just didn't really make that much difference to me. Not really.
Okay. I'll go on record. I'll go on record right now as saying I'm in full agreement with everything they've done so far, the few things they've done so far in the off season, starting with firing both coordinators, moving on from both coordinators. And when I say I'm in full agreement, I'm not predicting that it's going to work out. I'm not absolving Dan of whatever criticisms come with firing two guys that you hired 2 years after hiring them. But I am a fan of recognizing when mistakes have been made and trying to quickly correct them or doing course corrections. Too many times guys stand on whatever decision they made and just say they're gonna fall with they're gonna go down with the ship and we're gonna go down, we're gonna go out with who we came in with and all that. No, there's especially in professional sports, um, there is sometimes a need to course correct. If you made a decision and you ended up seeing results that did not line up with that decision, then you may need to course correct that. I think that in sports, sometimes you have to course correct. You don't need to be stubborn about decisions you've made that didn't work out. If you made a decision and then the results started to play out, and you saying, okay, I think we can improve on this. So I think we made a mistake here. We need to correct this. I think that you go ahead and you make that you go ahead and you make that decision and you make the adjustments accordingly. We were talking about in season adjustments. So I think you need to make mid regime adjustments. If you felt like at one point you needed to do this and then you decided, no, we need to do that, make that decision. And I don't think that Cliff is a bad offensive coordinator. I don't think that Joe Witt, he doesn't seem like he knew what he was doing, but I don't think Kingsbury is a bad offensive coordinator. I just think, first of all, his mindset and approach to the game is not what I like to see. It's not for my liking. But I do think he did some good things. And from a result standpoint, I don't even think he did a bad job this year considering all the injuries. It's just that in crucial moments, not I don't even want to say it, in challenging moments, I don't like his approach to the game. It's obvious Dan Quinn didn't like his approach. And when they met and they decided it wasn't going to work, there's no need to save face and not to make the correction because of any criticisms that have come with it. Go ahead, put your big boy pants on, make the correction, and move forward with it. So I'm glad he fired both coordinators. And then here's the other thing too. He's probably going to enter next season in a little bit of a warm seat. You might as well enter a season where you're in a warm seat doing what you want to do. And if that's what you want to do, then go ahead and do it because you're going to be judged accordingly anyway. So you might as well not put yourself in a position where things don't work out and then you have to say, man, what if I would have just, if I would have just so and such and such. Well, go ahead and do it and then let the chips fall where they may. So I'm definitely a fan of that. Now, let's start with defensive coordinator because that's still pending. So we'll start there. We're in a situation where we have a defensive head coach. So he's always going to have his thumb I think he's always going to have his thumb on the defense in some sort of way. But what direction would you like to see the defense go in terms of do you want to see us hire a defensive coordinator totally outside of his tree and philosophy and bring in his own defensive scheme where you totally give up any sort of influence and give him autonomy over over a different defensive scheme? Would you like to see him, hire some of the guys that's performing like a Al Harris that's a part of his tree? Or are you just like, hey, whatever get the job done? You don't care how it's done, who's in it, just hire the best guy. Where do you fall in line with that on how you want to see the defense moving forward?
Hire the best. Like if it's going to be an autonomous coordinator, just make it one of the best. For lack of a better word, make it an alpha who has shown that he can that the scheme he wants to use, he can make it work. We do need some personnel, so that's a dire need. Defensive players. So you're gonna have. So I think a large part of it is going to be on Adam Peters. Like you're gonna have to find some way to meet some needs here with this defense. You're gonna have to meet some of these needs. I don't care who you get. But I'd like to if he's not gonna be if we're gonna hire somebody who would kind of fall in line with Quinn and he can still have his thumbprint firmly on, okay. I'm not opposed to that, but I'm kind of now a little bit sketchy about would that work? Would that work to let Quinn have more of a thumbprint on it? Because he seems to be opposed to doing that. Would that work? But I have no problem with him hiring an alpha DC who can who could, even if we change the style of defense, somebody who recognizes when things ain't working with who you got and has something to go to, if you have to make some adjustments. He has something in his arsenal. Like definitely somebody who can, dial up some exotic blitzes and, just throw something at this, throw something at this. Don't just keep doing the same thing. Throw something at it. Have something in your arsenal where you can at least cover up for all your weaknesses a little bit.
Yeah. The interesting part of it is, yes, I think in a perfect world, he would go get the best guy regardless of background in a perfect world. I think the challenge in that is if you do go get you an alpha, will that alpha come to a place where a Dan Quinn is knowing Dan Quinn's defensive background? Like, is an alpha going to actually believe that he has that if I come to the commanders, I'm going to have the autonomies? One of the things, if I'm one of those alphas, I'm going to ask in the interview is, okay, Dan, if I do come, you know, when I start to do things schematically that you disagree with, what happens then? You know, of course, he's the head coach. Of course, he needs to have his fingerprint on it. But I think that's what makes it a little bit more challenging when you talk about bringing in somebody with a totally different scheme that coaches on your side of the ball. Again, in a perfect world, I'd be all for it. And if something like that happens and they're able to get it done and he's able to convince the guy that he's more of a CEO that's going to let him run it the way he wants to run it. I just don't know if that's going to be realistic in terms of bringing a guy like that in. My prediction, and I'll go ahead and move on to what I think will happen is, and I wouldn't be extremely disappointed by this, but I think they're going to hire Al Harris after once Chicago's done and he becomes available. That's what I think will happen is that they'll hire Al Harris. I don't think there'll be anybody hired or promoted from within out on that side of the ball. I don't think that's in play at all.
Mm-mm, no either.
But I do think of Al Harris, who he has ties to. Now, his the results of his units have been great. It's been stellar. But so are the results of Joe Witt's units before he became DC. His units were stellar as well, and also in the back end. Um, so I don't, time will tell as far as the results, but I think that's what's going to happen. I wouldn't be too mad at it. However, my preference would be, a stud guy that has produced already, that's got some experience in this era. A dream scenario, which I don't think will happen, would be a Schwartz. I think Schwartz is going to be hired as a head coach, or even a Flores. That would be a dream type scenario as well. I don't know enough about the various assistants that are out there. I've heard about some interviews that I have not been impressed about. The Raiders defensive coordinator, he doesn't have enough
Mm-mm,
results to me. Um,
mm-mm.
and some of these that brings me to when you hear about some of these guys, when you see so and so got interviewed, even the interviewing is like puzzling. Like, are you if you aren't really serious about hiring a dude, then to me it becomes a Rooney Rule interview. And if it's a Rooney Rule interview, I mean, I don't even know why guys put themselves in that position other than the exposure, I guess, or the tweet that goes out that says so and so interviewed with this team. But I don't even know why you're wasting your time interviewing folks that to me don't have a realistic chance of getting the job. And that's what I've heard. That's been my opinion on some of these guys that you see getting interviews. But that's what I think will happen. What do you think, aside from what you like to see? What do you think will happen?
I don't know because I don't because
It's fair.
I because I really don't know if Quinn thinks that he needs to have more of a finger on it. That would kind of go any prediction I make would be on that. Does Quinn think after this year and last year that he needs to have more of a finger on it? Or is he determined to find someone who can, carry it on his back? But Al Harris, I mean, well, one thing about it, I guess we might have more takeaways if he's the guy, since he seemed to really get that Chicago. He's with Chicago, right?
He's with Chicago right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so he seemed to have bumped up their aggressiveness as far as takeaways. So that might be one thing that might work in our favor. But I'm not all that enthusiastic about him, to be honest.
And see, that's the tricky thing about trying to, project, project results based on what they did with
Yeah,
their specialty groups. Because, like I said, I'm sorry, like I said, Joe Witt, he's coached some guys that put up some gaudy turnover numbers as well, and wasn't able to do it here. So, yes, I do think we need to upgrade in talent, though. Adam Peters got to get on his game, and as far as draft, free agency, whatever, we got a lot to do. We have a lot to
that's
do as
it.
it relates to bringing in talent. And one of the worries I have is we're very limited in what we can do from a draft perspective,
Sure.
because the trades that we talked about earlier. Philadelphia is about to make a playoff run, or maybe they'll get put out tomorrow. Who knows? However, they'll have 6 picks before we pick three. Before we pick 3 players, they'll have 6. Now I don't know if they'll parlay that into some more picks or do some trades, and they like to stay busy during the draft. But if the draft happened tomorrow and nobody made any trades, they would have picked 6 players before we picked three, and that worries me. We need to do something. Adam Pease need to do something to reverse that trend. I don't know what can be done or how we're going to acquire more picks in this year's draft. I think moving forward, we really need to be about building through the draft. Again, I wasn't against those trades we spoke to earlier, so I can't just in hindsight come back and say, "Oh, we shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have done that." But it's kind of a lesson in that if you say you're going to build through the draft, regardless of what happened, you shouldn't have let last year maybe be a distraction to you and just continue to build through the draft. Maybe that's what should have happened because what the results of it was we had a wasted season and now we don't have those draft picks. So, I mean, sure,
Well, I'm not that mad at them for swinging at it, for thinking that, you know what, we might could, do something this year. I'm not that mad at them for taking a swing at it. Yeah, it did set us back in our development, but you know,
I'm not
we
mad at them as well, but that's why I said maybe it's a lesson. Maybe it was a lesson for them and me as well. Because like I said, I was on board with those trades at the time. Debo, sure, yeah, I'll take Debo. Hey, Tunsil, somebody for Jaden's blindside, sure, bring him on. Oh, just a 3rd round pick, cool. But now here we are in the draft where we traded that 2nd round pick, and now it's a little bit more like, and Lord, what if we don't sign him back? So
but
I mean, what if we have a scenario where we don't sign Tunsil, we don't sign Debo, and all those picks are just gone?
that would be awful. That would be awful. But it would also still be, hey, we pushed all our cards out on the table. So I don't think that would make me say never push all your cards out on the table again. I don't think that would I wouldn't say that. But it would have to be, I mean, if anything was right for that type of view, it was our past season. So if it was a season like what we had and the circumstances, I wouldn't say don't take that gamble. We took it and we lost.
Well, that's where I would disagree with you. You're right. I'm not mad at pushing your chips into the table, and I wasn't mad. I wasn't mad at them doing it then, going all in then. The lesson I'm talking about is related to your timing, maybe the results of the season shouldn't have distorted what our thinking was as relates to team building and what kind of team we had. They did make a hire. They hired from within. They hired David Blau, a guy who's, I guess, the whispers around the league is he's the next big star. You're hearing Sean McVay vibes. The scuttlebutt is they didn't want another scenario where they have another young coach who used to be in Washington that now escapes and gets out of there without us having reaped the benefits of his development. So, real quick, what's your reaction to us hiring David Blau?
Well, I just found out a little while ago that we did. But yeah, I'm for it. I'm for it because, I think he does show promise actually. So yeah, I'm not, and then when I think about who they could get in his place, I don't think, I'm not all that enthusiastic about who's available.
And not just even when you go with the top candidates like the Mike McDaniels of the world after some examination, I do like this hire a little bit better. I also like it. Okay, first of all, I like the overall idea of them replacing Kingsbury with Blau. And then, okay, once they got rid of Kingsbury and now McDaniel comes available, I do like the idea of hiring Blau instead of Mike McDaniel. From this standpoint, the best you could hope for is that offense performs. And if that offense performs, Mike McDaniel is out the door on the next head coaching job, period. He might even get
Right,
one
right.
this year. He might
I'm
get
down
one.
to one. I'm down to one, by the way. So it's about to go.
He might even get one this year. But with David Blau, you do end up getting some years. So even if he's successful, if Jaden Daniels performs, if they win, he'll get some years. If they don't, well, that whole regime is probably gone anyways. But yeah, I'm pleased with the hire. I think that if he is the next Sean McVay, you'd hate to see him leave the building. You do want to reap the benefits of that sort of development. I'm just tired of seeing that graphic where they just got the list of coaches up there who've left Washington and went on and perform elsewhere. And I also like my organization making a bold move. If you're identifying a guy who you think is talented, and even if you think maybe he can use a little bit more development, but you think he's a talented guy and you want to go ahead and lock him up, go ahead and make that bold move. Football seasons, they're real fragile. So you got to do the thing that you think is going to be the best thing for winning right now, or you'll have regrets. But here we are. We're in another off season coming up. I'm going to be putting out episodes where we preview some off season activities coming up. We definitely going to preview the free agency period. We're going to preview the draft. So look out for more content wherever you see podcasts happening or hear podcasts happening. We're on every platform. So you can go to your Apple. If you see me on YouTube, you can go to your Apple YouTube. You ride in the car, subscribe to Apple, subscribe on Spotify, wherever you're getting your podcasts. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can put Linwood Gray in the search, or you could put Skins in the Burg in the search, and we'll go ahead and pop right up. Also, leave me a nice review on Apple. That'll really benefit us moving forward. But again, I promise you a big episode. We definitely had a big episode. We covered a lot of topics. Look out for the next episode coming where we probably review what happened in this weekend's playoff game. So thanks for tuning in. I want to thank my mom for coming and sharing her opinions. And we'll see you next time on Skins in the Burg podcast.